You wake up one day and realize that your memories don't feel like yours anymore. You remember the words that were said, but not quite how they were said. You recall the argument, but you can't tell if you were overreacting or if they were just better at staying calm. It's like your mind has been slightly rearranged, not broken, just reprogrammed. That's the quiet horror of gaslighting. It doesn't destroy your sanity overnight. It erodes it, grain by grain, until you start doubting the only thing that ever truly belonged to you: your perception of reality. And the most unsettling part? It doesn't just happen to naive or weak-minded people. It happens to intelligent, self-aware individuals, people who read psychology books, who recognize manipulation, who pride themselves on seeing through lies. So why does it still work? Why do smart people, rational, educated, emotionally intelligent people, fall victim to something that seems so obvious in hindsight? Because gaslighting doesn't target your intelligence, it targets your certainty. It doesn't argue with facts, it argues with your confidence in interpreting them. It doesn't destroy your logic, it bends your logic until it serves the wrong master. You begin to question not just what happened, but what you are capable of believing. And once that fracture forms, even a brilliant mind becomes vulnerable. Think about it. What makes a mind smart? It's pattern recognition, empathy, self-reflection. But those very traits are the tools a manipulator uses against you. They mirror your self-awareness back to you, twist your empathy into guilt, and weaponize your reason to make you explain their behavior. You don't realize it's happening because intelligence assumes awareness equals immunity. But awareness without emotional boundaries is just open terrain for psychological warfare. Gaslighting isn't about deception, it's about domination through distortion. It's not that you don't see what's happening, it's that you slowly stop trusting the you who sees it. And that's the genius of it. Because the moment you stop believing your own perception, someone else's version of reality becomes the only one that feels safe. So here's the paradox. The smarter you are, the easier it is to manipulate your sense of truth, because your mind will fight harder to make sense of what's happening. And sometimes, the need for coherence becomes the very reason you lose it. So the question isn't, why do people fall for gaslighting? The real question is, why does the mind defend the very illusion that's destroying it? The real power of gaslighting doesn't lie in deception. It lies in the manipulation of perception. And perception is the most fragile thing the human mind possesses because it's not built on truth. It's built on belief in truth. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Gaslighting thrives in that unconscious space, the gray zone between what you know and what you feel to be true. It doesn't need to rewrite your memories, it only needs to make you doubt them. Doubt is the seed. Once planted, the mind will do the rest on its own. A skilled manipulator doesn't fight your intelligence, they recruit it. They let your rationality turn against you. You start analyzing every argument, dissecting every word, replaying every scene, not to find the truth, but to justify your growing uncertainty. You begin thinking, maybe they're right, maybe I did misunderstand, maybe I'm being too sensitive. This is how the mind collapses inward, not through force, but through self-doubt disguised as humility. Friedrich Nietzsche warned of this when he wrote, "I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset that from now on I can't believe you." Gaslighting takes it one step further. It doesn't just make you doubt others, it makes you doubt yourself. It severs the umbilical cord between your perception and your conviction. Machiavelli and the Prince argued that power is not about truth or morality, it's about control over perception. Whoever controls what others believe to be real controls reality itself. Gaslighting is that principle distilled to a psychological art form, a Machiavellian manipulation of the human psyche where domination is achieved not through chains, but through confusion. From a psychological standpoint, it works because the human brain craves coherence. We are wired to find patterns, to make sense of contradictions. When someone introduces inconsistency into your world, denying something you saw, twisting something you said, your brain desperately tries to bridge the gap. And the more intelligent you are, the better you are at rationalizing their behavior, turning manipulation into misunderstanding, cruelty into complexity. That's why gaslighting doesn't need to overpower you, it just needs to outlast your certainty. Over time, the victim starts internalizing the abuser's voice. You begin preemptively correcting yourself, softening your tone, revising your memory, censoring your emotions, because somewhere deep down, you've accepted the possibility that you might be wrong. And that's the hidden tragedy. Gaslighting doesn't steal your truth. It convinces you to surrender it voluntarily. The aftermath of gaslighting is not loud. It doesn't explode, it erodes. Like water wearing down stone, it happens quietly, almost beautifully, until you realize you no longer recognize yourself in the reflection. At first, the damage hides beneath the surface, subtle changes in your tone, your posture, your choices. You begin apologizing for things you didn't do, doubting memories that once felt vivid, avoiding conflicts that require confidence. You shrink not out of fear, but out of adaptation. That's the cruel genius of psychological manipulation. It doesn't just wound you, it rewires you.
Your brain, trying to survive the constant uncertainty, begins to prioritize peace over truth. It stops asking questions that might lead to confrontation. It learns to stay silent in moments where truth used to roar. And slowly, silence becomes safety. But the cost of that safety is the slow suffocation of the self. Victims of gaslighting often describe feeling like they're walking on eggshells, but it's deeper than that. They're walking on the broken pieces of their own self-trust. Because once someone makes you question your reality, your inner compass fractures. You start looking outward for validation. Every choice, every thought, every emotional reaction now needs to be approved. And the abuser, consciously or not, becomes that approval system. They become both your confusion and your cure, your tormentor and your comfort, your enemy and your anchor. This is what psychologists call trauma bonding, a cycle where pain and reassurance come from the same source. It's the emotional equivalent of addiction. You know it's destroying you, but you can't detach because they've convinced you that your survival depends on their perception of you. The irony? The stronger your empathy, the deeper the trap. Because you keep trying to understand them, to fix the miscommunication, unaware that your empathy is being used as leverage. Eventually, you stop fighting for the truth, not because you don't care, but because you're exhausted. And that exhaustion, that quiet resignation, is the final victory of gaslighting. Not when you believe the lie, but when you stop believing that your truth matters. It's not madness, it's surrender. And the saddest part, from the outside, it still looks like love, like compromise, like maturity, when in reality, it's the slow, elegant disappearance of a person who once trusted their own mind. Freedom doesn't begin with escape, it begins with awareness. Imagine standing in front of the person who made you doubt everything, your memory, your emotions, your worth, and realizing for the first time that their power was never real. It was borrowed, built entirely on the trust you gave them. That moment, that quiet, trembling realization is rebellion. Because to see clearly after being gaslit is an act of war against the illusion itself. The first step to breaking free isn't confrontation, it's clarity. You start to notice the subtle contradictions in their words, the way their apologies feel rehearsed, The way your overreactions always seem to protect their image, never your pain. That's when your mind begins to wake up, like a muscle remembering its strength. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Gaslighting thrives in the unconscious, in that fog where truth and perception blur. But once you start naming the tactics, denial, projection, minimization, they lose their mystical power. You start to see the pattern, and in that moment, something shifts. You stop explaining yourself. You stop begging to be understood. You stop fighting for a truth that never needed permission to exist. Breaking free from gaslighting isn't about proving the other person wrong. It's about remembering that you were right to feel what you felt. That validation, that inner restoration, is what abusers fear most, because it means you no longer need them to define your reality. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed that power isn't sustained by truth, but by perception. When the perception collapses, so does the authority behind it. That's exactly what happens when a victim of gaslighting reclaims their perception. The abuser's entire empire, built on manipulation and emotional distortion, begins to crumble. You begin setting boundaries. You stop over-explaining. You detach emotionally, not out of bitterness, but out of awakening. This is the rebellion, quiet but absolute. The return of your inner voice feels foreign at first. You question it, test it, listen to it. It shakes, it cracks, but it's yours. And as that voice grows louder, something profound happens. You no longer crave their validation. You crave peace. And peace, true, unmanipulated peace, is the one thing gaslighters can never offer, because it cannot coexist with control.
So you walk away. Not dramatically, not with vengeance, just with truth. And for the first time, truth feels like freedom, not a battlefield. There comes a moment, long after the arguments fade, long after the manipulator's voice stops echoing in your head, when silence feels heavier than sound. It's the silence where truth finally returns home. You realize something unsettling, yet liberating. Gaslighting was never just about them distorting your reality. It was about you forgetting that reality could never be taken in the first place. They never stole your truth. They only convinced you to stop trusting it. And that's the final paradox. The mind doesn't lose itself through deception. It loses itself through doubt. The gaslighter plants a seed of uncertainty, and like a parasite, it grows only when you water it with self-questioning. But when you stop feeding that doubt, when you start saying, "I know what I saw, I know what I felt," the parasite dies, slowly, silently, but completely. It's then you understand what philosophers like Nietzsche meant when they said, "We are unknown to ourselves." You see, the greatest victory of gaslighting isn't control, it's confusion. Because confusion makes people obedient, and obedience, cloaked as harmony, becomes the perfect prison. But once you awaken, the chains turn invisible, not because they vanish, but because you stop believing they exist. You stop looking for validation in the eyes of those who profit from your blindness. You stop mistaking comfort for safety. You stop apologizing for seeing things others would rather keep hidden. This is not arrogance, it's consciousness. And consciousness, once awakened, cannot be gaslit. You start to see the pattern everywhere, in relationships, in politics, in corporations, in media. Gaslighting isn't just personal, it's cultural. It's the architecture of control, convincing people that what they see, feel, and know must first be approved by someone else. And so, breaking free isn't just an act of survival. It's an act of rebellion against an entire system designed to keep you uncertain. That's why recovery from gaslighting feels spiritual. It's not about revenge or righteousness. It's about returning to the sacred ground of your own perception. You stop asking, "What's real?" and instead whisper, "What feels true?" And as you rebuild that internal compass, slowly, painfully, beautifully, you realize the truth they never wanted you to know, that self-trust is the ultimate form of power. Because a person who trusts their perception cannot be manipulated. A person who trusts their intuition cannot be controlled. And a person who trusts their truth becomes untouchable. So, you walk away, not as a survivor, not as a victim, but something rarer, a mind reborn in its own light. And when you look back at the ruins of that psychological battlefield, you don't feel anger, you feel clarity. Because gaslighting only works on those who doubt their fire. And you, now, remember that yours was never extinguished. It was only waiting to be seen.